Almost every business out there is pretty sure they know which of their products are making money. But what if I told you the standard way of calculating costs is, well, wrong? Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on the hidden costs that could be secretly sabotaging your profits, and you might not even have a clue.
So let's just ask it straight up. Are your product costs lying to you? I know, it sounds a little dramatic, right? But for a surprising number of companies, the answer is a definite yes. The traditional way of doing the books can actually paint a super misleading picture, making your star products look like duds and your money losers look like champions.
All right, so here's what we're going to cover. First, we'll dig into the problem itself. Then we'll look at the old school way of doing things, the one big pot method. After that, we'll introduce a smarter approach, put the two head-to-head in a showdown, and finally, wrap up with why getting this stuff right is absolutely crucial. Okay, let's dive right into the heart of the problem. Every company has costs that aren't tied to just one product. We're talking about things like the factory rent, supervisor salaries, utility bills. We call this overhead, right? And the million-dollar question is always, how do you divide that big pile of costs fairly among all the different things you make? Get it wrong, and you are heading for trouble. And that leads to this thing called cost cross-subsidy. It sounds kind of technical, but the idea is simple. It's when one of your products is secretly picking up the tab for another one. This means you could be celebrating a product you think is a huge success when it's actually losing you money, all because its real costs are being hidden and paid for by another product. So how does this even happen? Well, to get it, we've got to look at the classic old school method for dealing with overhead. This is what we call traditional costing. And hey, its biggest selling point is that it's simple. The whole idea here is to take all your factory overhead, just throw it into one giant pot, and then spread it out like peanut butter across all your products using one single simple measurement. And most of the time, that measurement is direct labor hours. The logic kind of makes sense on the surface. The more hours my team spends on a product, the more overhead it should get. Simple. And the process itself is honestly super straightforward. You estimate your total overhead for the year, you estimate how many total labor hours you're going to use, you divide one by the other, and boom, you get one single rate. Then you just apply that same rate to every single product you make. Easy peasy. So in the example we're looking at, this factory has $360,000 in overhead and expects about 12,000 labor hours. Do the math, and you get one magic number, $30 per direct labor hour. And this single rate gets slapped onto every product. It doesn't matter if it's simple or complex. Now remember that number, $30. It's going to be really important later. All right, so now for the modern approach, activity-based costing, or ABC for short. If the old way is like using a giant paint roller to cover a wall, ABC is like using a whole set of tiny, precise brushes. It's truly a detective's approach, designed to find out where the costs really come from. Okay, so the big idea behind ABC is actually pretty brilliant. It says products don't just magically create costs. Nope, products demand activities, like setting up a machine or running quality checks, and it's those activities that eat up resources and money. So ABC focuses on figuring out what those key activities are and then assigns costs based on how much each product actually uses them. And look at this. This is where it starts to click. We're looking at the same $360,000 in overhead, but instead of that one big messy pot of money, ABC splits it up into different cost pools. In this case, we see that 120 grand is just for setting up machines, and the other 240 grand is for actually running them. See, we're already getting a much clearer picture. Now, I'll admit the ABC process has a few more steps, but it makes a ton of sense when you break it down. First, you identify the main activities. Then, you pool all the costs for each one. After that, and this is key, you calculate a separate rate for each activity. And finally, you trace those specific costs to your products based on their actual real-world usage. Okay, so we've got two methods on the table. One is simple, one is, well, a bit more work. But does it actually matter? Does it really change anything? Oh yeah, this is where it gets good. Let's get to the showdown. Wow, just look at these numbers. This table says it all. Check out product A. Using that simple old-school method, it was assigned $30 in overhead. But the more precise ABC method shows us its true overhead cost is only $20. And then you look at product B, whoa, the traditional method said $240, but ABC reveals the true cost is way higher at $280 per unit. So here's the bottom line, the big takeaway. Product A, which is a simple, high-volume product, was getting punished. It was being overcharged for overhead it didn't really use. Meanwhile, the complex, low-volume product B, the one that needed all those machine setups, wasn't being charged nearly enough. It was getting a total free ride. And that, right there, is cost cross-subsidization in the wild. That's the problem we talked about at the beginning. The old system made product A look less profitable than it really was. Well, it completely hid how expensive product B truly was to make. You could be out there pushing a product, thinking it's your star player, when it's actually dragging your profits down. Look, this isn't just about accountants geeking out over spreadsheets. Not at all. These numbers, they're the ones people at the top use to make huge, company-altering decisions about pricing, marketing, and strategy. This stuff matters. And when those numbers are wrong, oh man, the mistakes you can make are just massive. You might be overpricing your best sellers and wondering why your competitors are eating your lunch. Or even worse, you could be underpricing your complex stuff and literally losing cash on every single sale without even knowing it. You might even kill off a product that was actually a secret gold mine, all because the data was lying to you. So you might be thinking, okay, this ABC thing sounds amazing. Why isn't everyone doing it? Well, like most things, there's a catch. It's a trade-off. On one side, you get way more accurate costs, which leads to smarter decisions and less of that cross-subsidy nonsense. But on the other side, yeah, it's a lot more complex and expensive to set up and keep running. It's a big strategic choice. But if there is just one thing you remember from all of this, let it be this quote: activities consume resources, and products consume activities. It's the whole philosophy in a nutshell. It reminds us that costs don't just happen randomly. They're driven by specific actions. And if you can understand those actions, you can unlock the truth about your profitability. And that really just leaves us with one final question to think about, for you to think about. In your business, in your projects, in your world, where might a simple one-size-fits-all number be hiding the real story? Because as we've just seen, finding the truth could change absolutely everything. Thanks for diving into this with me.